Hello, and welcome to Backer Breaks It Down. In this episode, we are going to continue to look at inverse functions, and we are going to focus on actually writing the formula for an inverse function. So let's just recap what an inverse function is. Okay, so we all know the regular function notation f of x, right? Where basically it maps the input to the output in a regular function. And we know that in an inverse function, these two things are switched. So notice if you look here with the inverse notation, the input and the output quantities have switched. And so that's like the general idea for inverse functions is a regular function, it takes x and maps it onto y, and an inverse function will take a y value and map it onto x. So the x and y switch places. So when you go to write an inverse function, that's what you need to do first. So basically 3 easy steps to finding the inverse of a function. Step 1 is to rewrite f of x as y equals. So just replace the function notation with y. Step 2, swap the x and the y. So the x and the y's just switch places. And step 3 is solve for y. So get y all by itself. So looking at this problem right here, to get y all by itself, I would have to use my inverse operations. Those are the things we use when we solve equations. But I'm using those inverse operations to get my y value all by itself. So I add 4 to both sides. That gives me x plus 4 is equal to 7 times y. And then I can go and divide both sides by 7. And that's how I'm getting the y all by itself. Because like the 7s would cancel. Y is all by itself. So then my inverse function, f inverse of x, is given by this formula, x plus 4 divided by 7. So let's take a look at some additional examples. But 3 simple steps to find the inverse of a function. So step 1, replace f of x with y. So here I go. Easy. Step 2, swap the x and the y. So if I do that, I'm going to get x equals 1/5 y plus 2. Easy. Step 3, solve the function for y. So my goal is to get this y value all by itself. Keep your eye on the prize. So how can I do that? Well, the first thing I would need to do is I would need to subtract 2 from both sides of my function equation. This would give me x minus 2 is equal to 1/5 y. My goal is still to get that y all by itself. So what can I do next? Well, I could totally divide both sides by that 1/5, but that would look really strange. So remember, division and multiplying by the reciprocal do the same thing. So if I simply go and multiply this whole right-hand side by 5, 1/5 times 5, we'll get that y all by itself, right? But remember, I got to keep things equal and fair, so I need to multiply the left-hand side by 5 as well, and that gives me 5x minus 10 after I distribute. And so that would be my inverse function. My inverse function, let me use my notation, is 5x minus 10. So it's pretty easy to solve the equation for y. We're just using our equation solving skills that we've been using for years now. So let's check out another one. So step number 1, replace f of x with y. Step 2, swap the x and y. So I got x equals 4 times y cubed minus 8. And then step 3, get y all by itself. So the first thing that I would need to do here is I would need to add 8 to both sides of this equation. That's going to give me x plus 8 is equal to 4y cubed. All right. So keeping in mind, my goal is to get y by itself. The next thing I would need to do is divide both sides by 4. So that means the 4s would cancel like so. And then to get the y finally all by itself, I would have to undo the whole cubing of it, so raising it to the 3rd power. So if I were to take the cubed root of that, that's how I'm getting y all by itself. Keep things fair, do it to the other side as well. And so we end up with the cubed root of x plus 8 all divided by 4. And I'm going to say it's perfectly fine to keep it this way. Simplifying is a whole nother lesson, and we're just focusing on finding inverses here, okay? So 3 simple steps. Step 1, replace the function notation with y. Step 2, switch the x and the y. So if we do that, we get x is equal to 5 divided by y plus 4. And then step 3, solve the function for y. So in this one here, I would need to subtract the 4 from both sides. So that's going to give me x minus 4 equals 5 divided by y. And I say 5 divided by y because to undo that division of y, I would need to multiply both sides by y. So I'm a little hesitant to distribute the y because if I distribute the y, I'll have x times y minus 4 times y, and I'm trying to get y all by itself. So bringing 2 y's into this, yeah, I don't want to do that. So I'm not going to distribute. There's got to be another way that I can get y all by itself without distributing. Well, think about what the left-hand side says. It says y times the quantity x minus 4. So that means I can divide both sides by this quantity of x minus 4. And doing that gets y all by itself because the x minus 4's would cancel. Y is now all by itself, and it equals 5 divided by x minus 4, and that would be my inverse function. So 3 simple steps to find the inverse of a function. Step 1, rewrite f of x as y. Step 2, swap the x and the y. And step 3, solve for y. Get y all by itself. And that's how Backer breaks it down.